Mechanic's daughter helps a guy with flat tire, not knowing he's a millionaire, and falls in love with her. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow across the sprawling fields that lined the narrow country road. Daniel Wright pulled his luxury car to the shoulder, exhaling sharply as he stepped out to inspect the damage. His designer loafers crunched against the gravel, and the sight of the flat tire made him groan. Of all places to get a flat, perfect, he muttered, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. He pulled out his phone to call for assistance, but the screen taunted him with the dreaded words, "No service." Frustrated, he tossed the phone onto the driver's seat and leaned against the car, gazing at the empty road ahead. The sound of an approaching engine broke the silence. Daniel turned to see a rusted pickup truck slowing down as it neared him. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing a young woman with auburn hair tied back in a messy ponytail. "Need a hand there?" she called out, her voice carrying a casual confidence. Daniel straightened up, his city-bred skepticism kicking in. Yes, actually. Do you happen to have a spare tire or tools? My jack isn't working." The woman pulled the truck over, hopping out with an easy grace. She wore faded jeans and a grease-stained t-shirt, her boots scuffed but sturdy. "Lucky for you," she said with a grin, grabbing a toolbox from the truck bed. "I come prepared. Mind if I take a look?" Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure? It's not exactly a simple fix." She raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in her green eyes. "Let me guess, you think I don't know what I'm doing." "Not at all," he replied quickly, though his tone betrayed his doubt. "Relax," she said, crouching by the flat tire. "Name's Emma, by the way. My dad's a mechanic. I've been fixing cars since I was old enough to hold a wrench." Daniel watched as Emma deftly set to work, her movements quick and precise. She had the spare tire and jack in place before he could offer to help. "Looks like you hit something sharp," she said, inspecting the old tire. "This one's toast." "Good thing your spare's in decent shape." "You really know what you're doing," Daniel admitted, folding his arms as he leaned against the car. "Don't sound so surprised," Emma replied with a smirk. "Not everyone needs a roadside assistance app to survive." Daniel chuckled, despite himself. "Touche." As she tightened the lug nuts, he found himself studying her. She wasn't what he expected, a stranger on an empty road willing to help without hesitation. There was something refreshing about her straightforwardness, a stark contrast to the polished personas he was used to in his world of boardrooms and social elites. "All done," Emma announced, standing and wiping her hands on a rag she'd pulled from her pocket. "You're good to go." Daniel reached for his wallet, pulling out a crisp bill. "Here, let me pay you for your time." Emma shook her head, waving it off. "Keep your money. I was just helping out a fellow traveler." "Really?" Daniel asked, surprised. "Really," she said, tucking her rag back into her pocket. "But if you're ever stranded again, maybe invest in a better jack." Daniel laughed. "Noted." As she climbed back into her truck, he called out, "Wait, can I at least buy you dinner?" "It's the least I can do." Emma paused, one hand on the steering wheel. "Thanks, but I've got a lot on my plate tonight. Take care, city boy." "City boy." She drove off, leaving Daniel standing by his car, the sound of her truck fading into the distance. For a moment, he stood there, the quiet of the road settling back around him. He climbed into his car and started the engine, but as he drove away, he couldn't shake the image of the confident, no-nonsense woman who had appeared out of nowhere to save the day. He found himself wondering, who is Emma? And why can't I stop thinking about her? The golden hues of the setting sun cast a warm glow over the quiet road as Daniel stepped back from his car, still watching Emma drive off in her battered pickup. The spare tire was securely in place, but something about the encounter left him feeling unsettled, in a way he couldn't quite explain. Shaking his head, he climbed back into his car and started the engine. Just as he merged onto the main road, he spotted Emma's truck pulling into a small diner up ahead. Impulsively, he slowed down and turned into the parking lot, deciding he couldn't let her drive off into obscurity. Inside, the diner buzzed with casual chatter. Emma was seated at the counter, sipping coffee from a chipped mug and thumbing through a dog-eared repair manual. Her presence felt easy, natural, completely unpretentious. Daniel approached, clearing his throat. "I thought you had a lot on your plate tonight." Emma turned, surprised, but then her lips curved into a wry smile. "And I thought city boys didn't hang out in places like this." "Touche," Daniel said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Look, I owe you one. Let me at least buy you dinner." Emma tilted her head, studying him. Dinner, huh? No fancy restaurants or overpriced cocktails? Daniel chuckled. I'm not as high maintenance as I look. Besides, I figure you'd prefer a cheeseburger over foie gras. Emma laughed, motioning to the stool beside her. Fair enough. Have a seat. A waitress came by, taking their orders: burgers, fries, and milkshakes. As they waited for their food, the conversation began to flow naturally. So, you work at a garage? Daniel asked, leaning forward. Yep, Emma replied. My dad's place. I've been helping out since I was a kid. He taught me everything: how to fix engines, diagnose problems, you name it. Daniel smiled, genuinely impressed. That's not something you hear every day. Most people wouldn't know the first thing about fixing a flat. Most people don't grow up surrounded by cars and grease, Emma quipped. But I love it. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it work again. Daniel nodded, feeling a pang of familiarity. Fixing something broken, that's what I'm always trying to do, he thought. What about you? Emma asked, snapping him out of his reverie. What do you do, city boy? Oh, Daniel said, feigning casualness. I'm in business. Some tech stuff mostly. Emma raised an eyebrow. Tech stuff? That's vague. Daniel shrugged, trying to downplay it. It's nothing exciting, mostly boring meetings and emails. You're the one with the interesting job. Emma smirked but didn't press further. Well, I bet you've got some stories from the big city. It's got to be a whole different world from here. It is, Daniel admitted. But I think I needed a change of pace. Meeting you has been the most refreshing thing that's happened in a while. Emma blinked, momentarily caught off guard by his sincerity. Thanks, she said softly. You're not so bad yourself for a city boy. The food arrived, and they ate while sharing more stories. Emma talked about growing up in the small town, helping her dad at the garage, and dreaming of traveling the world. I'd love to see Europe, she said wistfully. Italy, especially. Something about those winding streets and old architecture. Daniel smiled, picturing the places she described. You should go. Life's too short not to chase your dreams. Emma sighed. Maybe one day. Right now I've got the garage to think about. My dad's health isn't great, so I've been taking on more of the workload. Her words tugged at something deep in Daniel. Despite her challenges, she exuded a quiet strength and determination. What about you? Emma asked, changing the subject. What do you want to do? Daniel hesitated, unsure how to answer without revealing too much. I guess I'm still figuring that out, he said finally. But meeting people like you makes me think I've been looking in the wrong places. Emma laughed, shaking her head. You're smooth, I'll give you that. By the time they finished their meal, the sky had darkened, and the diner's neon sign buzzed faintly in the background. Daniel walked Emma to her truck, feeling reluctant to let the evening end. Well, Emma said, leaning against the driver's door, I guess this is where we part ways. Yeah, Daniel said, stuffing his hands into his pockets. Thanks again for helping me out back there. Don't mention it, Emma replied. Like I said, just helping out a fellow traveler. Daniel hesitated, then smiled. Any chance I'll see you again? Emma shrugged, climbing into her truck. Guess that depends on you, city boy. She started the engine and drove off, leaving Daniel standing in the dim light of the diner parking lot. As he got into his car, Daniel realized something: he didn't even know her last name. But one thing was certain, he wasn't ready to let this be the last time they met. I'll find you, Emma, he murmured to himself, determination sparking in his chest. The bustling noise of the city filled Daniel's penthouse, but the view of the skyline did little to distract him. Emma's laugh, her sharp wit, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't shake. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Who are you, Emma? He murmured to himself. He had meetings, calls, and deadlines piling up, but nothing seemed to matter as much as finding the woman who had completely captivated him in a single evening. All he had was her first name and a vague mention of her father's garage. That would have to be enough. The contrast between Daniel's world and Emma's was stark. One day he was in a sleek boardroom, negotiating a deal worth millions. The next, he found himself driving through the narrow streets of the small town, a place where everyone seemed to know each other. Daniel parked his car, a more modest sedan he'd borrowed to blend in, and stepped into the local diner where they'd had their impromptu dinner. The waitress behind the counter eyed him curiously as he approached. Excuse me, he began, I'm looking for someone named Emma. She works at her father's garage. The waitress raised an eyebrow. Emma Collins? Daniel's heart leapt. Yes, that's her. The waitress crossed her arms, her tone wary. Why are you looking for her? I just wanted to thank her properly, he said, choosing his words carefully. She helped me out recently, and I didn't get the chance to repay her kindness. The waitress studied him for a moment before nodding toward the window. Her dad's garage is 2 blocks down. You'll see the sign. The Collins garage was a modest, no-frills building with a sign that had clearly seen better days. The scent of oil and metal hung heavy in the air, and the clang of tools echoed from inside. Daniel hesitated at the entrance, unsure if he should interrupt. He stepped in cautiously, the gravel crunching under his feet. There she was, half hidden under the hood of an old truck, her hair tied back in a bandana. She wiped her hands on a rag, her focus entirely on the engine in front of her. We seem to keep meeting under cars, Daniel said, his voice breaking the quiet. Emma froze, then turned slowly, her expression shifting from surprise to something unreadable. Daniel? He smiled, stepping closer. I told you I'd find you. Emma blinked, clearly taken aback. What are you doing here? Daniel held up his hands. Relax. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to thank you again, for helping me, for being, well, you. Emma tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. And you came all the way out here for that? I couldn't get you out of my head, he admitted, his tone sincere. Her smile faltered slightly, and she leaned against the truck. That's flattering, but I'm guessing there's more to this visit than just a thank you. Daniel hesitated, realizing she was more guarded than he'd expected. I also wanted to get to know you better, he said finally. If you're okay with that? Emma studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face. You're not exactly blending in, you know. People around here don't usually show up in shoes that cost more than my rent. Daniel laughed, holding up his hands. Guilty as charged. But I promise, I'm just here to spend time with you. No strings, no agenda. After a moment's pause, Emma sighed. All right, city boy. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let me finish up here, and I'll show you around town. Daniel nodded, stepping back as she returned to her work. He watched her from a distance, struck once again by her ease and confidence. The small town unfolded before Daniel like a storybook, filled with quaint shops, friendly faces, and a sense of community he'd rarely experienced. Emma took him to her favorite spots, a cozy bookstore, a scenic overlook, and a local park where she used to play as a kid. As they walked, their conversation grew more relaxed. Emma shared stories of her childhood, her father's garage, and her dreams of one day traveling the world. Why haven't you? Daniel asked as they sat on a bench overlooking a lake. Emma shrugged. Life gets in the way. The garage is my dad's livelihood, and he needs me to keep it running. Daniel nodded, admiring her selflessness. You're a good daughter. Emma glanced at him, her expression softening. And you're surprisingly decent for a guy who seems too polished for a place like this. They both laughed, the sound echoing across the water. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Thanks for showing me around, he said, as they walked back to her truck. Emma shrugged, though her smile betrayed her enjoyment. Just returning the favor, I guess. Daniel hesitated, not wanting the day to end. Can I take you to dinner again? Something tells me we're not out of things to talk about. Emma raised an eyebrow. I'll think about it. But don't push your luck, city boy. As she drove off, Daniel stood in the fading light, a grin spreading across his face. He was determined to see her again. Something about Emma Collins made him feel like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The day started simply, but for Daniel and Emma, it felt extraordinary. They strolled through the small town streets, stopping at Emma's favorite spots. Daniel listened intently as she shared stories of growing up here, the old bookstore where she spent weekends as a child, the park where she learned to ride a bike, and the diner where her dad used to treat her to milkshakes after a long day at the garage. You make this place sound magical, Daniel said as they walked along a tree-lined path in the park. Emma smiled wistfully. It's home. Not perfect, but it's where I learned what matters: hard work, family, loyalty. Her words struck a chord with Daniel. He had spent his life chasing success, rarely pausing to appreciate the simple things she seemed to cherish effortlessly. Later, at a cozy cafe, they sat by the window, sharing coffee and a plate of homemade cookies. Emma's laughter rang out as Daniel recounted a childhood mishap involving a science fair and a poorly timed soda explosion. "You're full of surprises," Emma said, grinning. "I wouldn't have pegged you for the science experiment gone wrong type." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Daniel replied, his tone light but his words laced with truth. Emma tilted her head, her expression turning thoughtful. "That's true. You've been pretty vague about your life. What exactly do you do in the city?" "I told you I'm in business," Daniel said, trying to sound casual. "Business is a big category," Emma pressed, a playful glint in her eye. "Are we talking retail? Tech? Selling mystery potions on street corners?" Daniel chuckled nervously. "Tech. Mostly startups and investments." Emma leaned back, studying him. "Huh, sounds like you've got a pretty decent gig." "You could say that," Daniel replied, averting his gaze to his coffee cup. The moment of levity was interrupted by the sound of a TV mounted on the wall. The cafe was quiet, and the news anchor's voice carried clearly across the room. In other news, Wright Enterprises CEO Daniel Wright announced a major acquisition today, solidifying his position as one of the most influential young entrepreneurs in the country. Emma glanced at the screen, her eyes widening as a picture of Daniel appeared beside the news anchor. She turned back to him, her expression shifting from confusion to realization. "So," she said slowly, her voice low but steady, "care to explain why the CEO of Wright Enterprises is pretending to be a regular guy?" Daniel froze, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under her gaze. "Emma, I can explain." "Please do," she said, crossing her arms, "because I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to lie to you. I wanted to know if someone could care about me for who I am, not what I have." Emma's eyes narrowed. "So this was a test. Is that what this is? You show up in your fancy car, play the humble act, and see if the small-town girl passes?" "No," Daniel said quickly, his voice earnest. "It wasn't like that. I met you, and I didn't know how to tell you without ruining what we had." Emma shook her head, her hurt evident. "What we had?" "Daniel, you lied to me from the start. If you couldn't be honest about who you are, how can I believe anything you've said?" Daniel stood, desperate to make her understand. "Emma, please. I wasn't trying to deceive you. I just didn't want my money to define how you saw me. I've had too many people care about me for the wrong reasons." Emma's jaw tightened, her voice trembling with emotion. "And instead of trusting me to be different, you assumed you had to manipulate me into proving it." Daniel's shoulders sagged. "I was wrong. I see that now. But everything I felt for you is real. You have to believe me." Emma stared at him for a long moment before shaking her head. "I don't know if I can." "You need to leave, Daniel." The ride back to the city was silent and heavy for Daniel. His penthouse, usually a sanctuary, felt cold and empty without the warmth of Emma's laughter or the spark of her presence. He replayed their conversation over and over, each word cutting deeper than the last. Back in her small town, Emma sat on the porch of the garage, the night air cool against her skin. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer, and her heart ached with conflicting emotions. Was Daniel's deception something she could forgive? Could she trust him again? Both of them were left wondering if this was the end of their story, or the beginning of something they'd have to fight for. The city skyline sparkled like a sea of stars, but Daniel barely noticed as he stood on his penthouse balcony, staring into the distance. Emma's words echoed in his mind, sharp and unrelenting. "If you couldn't be honest about who you are, how can I believe anything you've said?" He gripped the railing tightly, his chest heavy with regret. For the first time in years, someone had seen beyond his wealth, his success, and he had ruined it with his fears and insecurities. "I can't let this end here," he muttered to himself. "I need to fix this." Meanwhile, in her small town, Emma was facing struggles of her own. The garage had been hit hard by a competitor's unethical tactics. Underhanded deals and false reviews had driven away many loyal customers. "Dad, we'll get through this," Emma assured her father, even as doubt crept into her voice. She spent every waking hour trying to keep the business afloat, determined not to let their family legacy crumble. But as the days went by, the weight of the challenge grew heavier. Unbeknownst to Emma, Daniel had been keeping tabs on the situation. Through discreet inquiries, he learned about the competitor's shady dealings and the toll it was taking on Emma's garage. "This isn't just about helping her," Daniel told himself. "It's about doing what's right." He put his resources to work, hiring investigators to dig into the competitor's business practices. The findings were damning: fraudulent contracts, tax evasion, and even threats against other local businesses. Daniel took action, ensuring the evidence was turned over to the proper authorities. Within weeks, the competitor's operation was shut down, and news of the scandal spread through the small town like wildfire. At the garage, Emma and her father were stunned when they began receiving calls from old customers, eager to return now that the competition was gone. "I don't understand," Emma said, sitting at the desk late one night. "It's like the universe suddenly decided to give us a break." But deep down, a part of her wondered if this wasn't a coincidence. Her suspicions were confirmed when she overheard two customers discussing the scandal and the anonymous figure who had exposed it. One name came to mind, and Emma couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her chest. The next morning, she packed a bag and drove to the city. Daniel was in the middle of a meeting when his assistant interrupted, announcing Emma's arrival. His heart raced as he excused himself and headed to the lobby. There she was, standing with her arms crossed, her eyes a mix of determination and uncertainty. "Emma," he said, breathless. "We need to talk," she replied. In his office, Emma wasted no time. "Was it you?" Daniel didn't bother denying it. "Yes. I couldn't stand by and do nothing while you were struggling." Emma's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy your forgiveness," he admitted. "I wanted to make things right without expecting anything in return." Emma looked at him, her walls slowly breaking down. "I appreciate what you did, but you should have trusted me to accept you, as you are, flaws and all." Daniel stepped closer, his voice earnest. "I was scared, Emma. Scared of losing the only real connection I've had in years. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to protect what we had." Her shoulders relaxed, and she sighed. "You've got a lot to learn about trust, city boy. But I'm willing to teach you, if you're willing to listen." Over the next few days, Daniel and Emma worked together to strategize ways to rebuild the garage. Daniel offered his expertise openly, insisting they act as equals. "I'll help you," he said, "but only if we do this together." Emma smirked. "Deal." As their relationship began to mend, a new challenge arose. Daniel's involvement with Emma and the garage didn't sit well with some members of his company's board. "Your focus is being pulled away," one board member argued during a meeting, "and your personal choices are attracting scrutiny we can't afford." Daniel stood his ground. "If helping people like Emma damages my reputation, then maybe we're not the kind of company I want us to be." The room fell silent, but Daniel knew this battle was far from over. Back at the garage, Emma worked on a vintage car while Daniel helped organize paperwork. "Do you ever think about leaving all this behind?" Daniel asked, gesturing around the garage. Emma wiped her hands on a rag and leaned against the workbench. "Sometimes, but this place is my home. It's where I learned everything, where my dad built something out of nothing. I couldn't just walk away." Daniel nodded, understanding her loyalty more than ever. "You're incredible, you know that?" Emma rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. "Don't get sappy on me now." As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Daniel and Emma sat on the porch of the garage, their shoulders brushing. "Do you think we can really do this?" Emma asked quietly. Daniel turned to her, his expression unwavering. "I know we can, as long as we're in this together." Emma smiled, a flicker of hope lighting her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt like the weight on her shoulders was manageable. But in the back of their minds, they both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The tension in the boardroom was palpable as Daniel stood at the head of the table, facing a group of stern faces. "You're jeopardizing the company's reputation," one board member said sharply. "Your involvement with this small-town endeavor has become a distraction." Daniel took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "What I'm doing is helping a community and supporting someone I care about. If that's a problem for this board, then perhaps we need to rethink our values." Another member leaned forward. "Daniel, the investors." "I'll handle the investors," Daniel interrupted, his voice firm. "This company was built on innovation and supporting those with potential. If we can't back actions that reflect those principles, then we've lost our way." His unwavering stance silenced the room. Though the board members exchanged wary glances, Daniel knew he had made his position clear. Meanwhile, back in the small town, Emma's world was buzzing with activity. The garage, once struggling, now brimmed with hope. Customers filled the lot, locals offered their support, and the shop was alive with the sounds of progress. "You've got the whole town rooting for you," her father said, pride evident in his voice. Emma smiled as she tightened a bolt on a car's engine. "It's not just me, Dad. Daniel's helped more than he realizes." Though she hadn't seen him in days, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, his determination, his charm, and his unyielding belief in her. News of Daniel's efforts to support small businesses began to spread, painting his company in a positive light. Articles celebrated his work with the Collins Garage, and investors started to see the value in aligning with ethical practices. At the next board meeting, the once critical members conceded, "Your actions have brought more goodwill and media attention than we could have anticipated," one admitted. "We misjudged the situation." Daniel nodded but remained focused. "This isn't just about publicity. It's about doing the right thing, and I plan to continue making decisions that align with that." A few days later, Daniel drove back to the small town, a sense of anticipation building as he neared the garage. The renovations were complete, and the space had been transformed into a thriving hub. Emma was inside, organizing tools when she heard his car pull up. She turned, surprised to see him stepping out with a familiar smile. "City boy," she teased, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Didn't expect to see you here." Daniel grinned. "I thought I'd drop by and check on the place." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Everything's running smoothly, thanks to you." "That's not the only reason I'm here," Daniel said, his tone turning serious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Emma's eyes widened as he opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Emma," Daniel began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've helped me fix more than just a flat tire. You've shown me what truly matters: integrity, hard work, and the strength to fight for what's right. Will you let me be part of your journey?" Emma stared at him, her expression softening into a smile. "Only if we're equals in this partnership." Daniel laughed, his relief evident. "Always." She extended her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. The crowd of garage employees and locals who had gathered bursting into cheers. The celebration that followed was joyous and heartfelt. The garage was decorated with string lights, tables filled with food, and the laughter of friends and family filling the air. Daniel and Emma stood side by side, soaking in the moment. "You know," Emma said, leaning close, "I never thought a flat tire could lead to this." Daniel smiled, pulling her into an embrace. "Neither did I, but I wouldn't change a thing." As the music played and the celebration continued, they danced under the stars, knowing they had found something rare and unshakable. For Daniel and Emma, it wasn't just a partnership. It was the beginning of a life built on trust, love, and the belief that even the most unlikely connections could change everything. As the stars shone over the transformed garage, Daniel and Emma danced into a future built on trust, love, and mutual respect, a reminder that sometimes the simplest encounters can lead to the most extraordinary stories. If this heartwarming tale touched your soul, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with someone who believes in the power of love. For more stories that inspire and uplift, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and join our community. Together, let's celebrate the moments that change lives forever. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.